Did you learn those stretches on Aubrey's cello stream in the morning? Oh, look, I have you muted somehow. Let me try to fix this. Doop a doop. All right, go ahead and talk again for me.
I'm talking again.
There you are.
You can't keep me down. I mean, you can. You have all the power here.
All the power. All right. Well, I mean, we are rolling, so I would say go for it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to what's this Sunday morning, and another episode of Owlbear Soup.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, you know what, Rich? You're a lot quieter than I normally have you. Let's see if I can fix that too.
Okay. Well, in that case, I am one of your hosts. I'm Rich. Hello, and the knobs and dials and things
There we
is
go.
is a terrifying skeleton.
All right, so I think I got you. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Let me see if I can turn you up just a little bit more. But you can go ahead
Just
and
a little bit more.
There we go. Haha.
Okay. Nice.
I think we're rolling. I think we're good. Woo! Technical
Awesome.
difficulties. What
Great.
a way to start the day. It was definitely one of those mornings where I was like not firing on all cylinders already as it was. So, coming in and doing troubleshooting first thing. Well, it was a challenge.
Yeah. I hear that. When did I wake up? Recently.
Right? Yeah, it was fully my intention to get up. Yeah, like you said, fully my intention to get up extra early and do so double, like just go over all my research and just really. But here we are. We're gonna do it live.
Yes. Perfect. It's all right. This is stuff we've been thinking about for quite some time since we brought up this idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've had a little bit of experience with as far as running games, and that in our main topic of the week is going to be, horror in your D&D game, essentially.
Yes.
Not even just D&D, but any RPG. But we're going to be kind of telling it from the perspective of, hey, I want to run it for D&D, but this could be good for Pathfinder. This could be good for Pony Finder. This could be good for Seven Seas. Whatever.
The only 3 games there are?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a good list. If there were only 3 games.
Right. Shadowrun. It would work for Shadowrun. We're up to 4.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
4. The White Wolf games have horror baked into them, so that's a whole plethora of RPGs that we could use some of this fun.
That's true.
Yeah, wow. Absolutely. Pony Finder.
A horror Pony Finder. That's exciting.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take that as inspiration. Because those new minis just came out. I know, jumping ahead in new stuff, but they just D&D put out of Find ready minis, and I just saw character names recently. They're all very adventurous.
Nice.
I don't know if you have seen those, but very cool.
All right. I have not seen those specifically, but I will definitely keep an eye out for them. But I guess since we're talking about it, let's talk a little bit about news type stuff.
Yeah.
Rich, you're a little digitally on my screen, but it's nice and creepy. That's perfect for our horror themed. You look like a monster to me, but that's so weird. All right. Well, anyway.
Oh wow, I am all pixelated out. That's no good.
I wonder what that's from. All right. Well, I'll have to do some more troubleshooting later. But in the meantime, I think you're starting to slowly clear up.
Okay, that's good. I'll just sit here very quietly and not move a whole lot, and soon all those chunks will just push back into place.
Right? Yeah.
Wow, okay. I am a monster.
All right, so real quick, we'll talk about this. The Double Clicks Live says you look great, so we're good to go.
That's good. Good.
Yeah.
I've never felt better.
Yeah. Oh man. So there is a new website, dndmini.com. This is from WizKids. This is the WizKids online mini store. If you go there between now and I think the end of the year and spend $100 there, you will get a special promo for Frostmaiden, which is 3 Frostmaiden Yeti Tykes. Hilarious.
Oh, really?
Yes. And they
Those
are
are
very adorable. So
Yeah, Teos had just posted one of those when he was breaking some bricks open, and that one looks really good. And
Oh,
a lot of those minis look good.
yeah, did he get the Tykes too? Yeah, I didn't see them post the Tykes, but
I
I bet
think
he
he,
did.
I think he got one of them in the set.
Oh, okay.
There was a small Yeti in there that they got. So if you get those 3 and you get, a bunch more Frostmaiden minis, you might get more than 3.
Ooh, all the minis.
Might have an army of Tykes.
Yes. Yes, please.
But they seem very good. There's that brick. The set was really exciting. There's some cool. There's this kobold mountaineer on it, and that was the one that really got me. Wearing
Yes.
like a dragon skull, and just with a backpack ready to go, and then this huge like major Yeti to go with all your Yeti Tykes was
Nice.
very cool as well.
Well, in kind of speaking with about kobolds, there's some more news too. The latest compendium for Sage Advice is rolled out, and that includes the latest batch of erratas. And one of the big things that has come around is the fact that there are no longer any negatives in racial ability modifiers. So that means kobolds and orcs no longer have that -2 to their intelligence. And I don't remember who else had minuses, but those are the 2 big ones that stood out in
Yeah.
my mind. So that's kind of fun.
That's good. Yeah.
Makes kobolds playable.
I mean, I was just telling you about one of my kids who loves them, but yeah, absolutely. They are much more on board. And now that Mountaineer is looking more exciting to me. Maybe that'll be my rhyme character, NPC, whatever.
I'm into
That's
it.
just a good positive step. It was such a weird holdover, and I'm glad it's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see here. What else is in the news before we get into our subjects of the day?
Oh my gosh. I have a trio of Kickstarters that I've been watching that all came out early this week, and they're all from folks who I think got their publishing start on the DMs Guild and have now done, well, some of them even before that, but they're all folks who are working with Wizards. I know at least one of them was one of the co-designers on Rime of the Frostmaiden, and I thought it was worth taking a quick look at what they're up to when they have the opportunity to do some OGL stuff. And so the first one I want to take a quick look at is just Erlen Stolen Notes to Valea.
Mhm.
This is by Anne Gregerson, and this is like an entire setting. It's a reprint that she's had out on Drive-Thru RPG before, but it is this world of sin and virtue and monstrous corruption. And the thing that makes me most excited is she's designed these corrupted creatures that basically have 3 stages. And the more corrupted they are, kind of the scarier they get. So
Nice.
there are things you can do, I think, to like heal their corrupted levels is part of the game. And then also just, some of the creatures really enjoy this corruption, and you can get a Minotaur that's like, as corrupt as possible to gain, ridiculous powers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this whole place is about being this divine champion and going through trials, joining these different guilds, and beating up big old scary monsters, which I think is fun. They've got a couple new races in here as well, some subclasses and things that are pretty good. And I like it because I backed into the PDF level, which was $24.
Sweet.
And for me, for this much content, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Are you ready for number 2?
Yeah,
you ready for
number 2?
So so that one's kind of pretty standalone. I think that's Anne's world, and she's putting it out there. The second one I want to take a look at is Jeff Stevens, who is writing a series of adventures. It's called The Adventures from the Pot-Bellied Kobold. And it has a huge list of authors who are all writing adventures for it. It's got MT Black, Oliver Clegg, Sly Flourish, Sean Merwin is on here, Kat Evans. It's just a fantastic list. Kat Kruger, who have done all sorts of stuff with D&D, and this is just their opportunity to write some weird little adventures. at specific levels to get your characters all the way, I think, from first to about 9th or 10th level.
Nice.
Yeah. So always a fan of that. These that come out on Kickstarter, they can't use the Forgotten Realms, for example. So these are all, you can slot them in however you want to in whatever world you're playing. It's pretty perfect for homebrew, I find. And that one, the PDF there is $15. Or 20. 20 if you want some stretch goals in it later on, I think.
All right. And then I have a Kickstarter that was just announced in the chat room that I didn't know about until this very second. And it is called Thirsty Sword Lesbians. I know.
What?
Yeah, right?
I should be watching the chat a little closer.
I know. Like I keep trying to paste a link, but it's not playing nice with me right now. Let's see here. So Thirsty Sword Lesbians. This is a oh man. Nope. All right. Let's do it like this. And then I'll talk about it first. So Thirsty Sword Lesbians battle the Lady of Change when her enforcers march down from the frosty north. They rocket through the stars to safeguard diplomats, ending generations-old conflict even when the swords are crossed. They seek peace with their opponent and sometimes connect more deeply than anyone expects. I mean, it sounds over the top and amazing. The art looks fantastic, and I am about to send the link over into the chat. It is by Evil Hat Games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Let's see. In this book, you'll find flirting, sword fighting, and zingers in a system designed for both narrative drama and player safety. Innovative tech on the powered by Apocalypse family of games. 9 character types, each focusing on particular emotion. So Beast, Chosen, Devoted, Infamous, Nature Witch, Scoundrel, Seeker, Spooky Witch, and the Trickster. Cool. This looks like a ton of fun too. I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up, Laser. It is now on my to watch list.
I see that Kickstarter is going to launch on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very cool.
All right.
Wow. Have to poke at that one.
Okay.
Although there is an early playtest draft review. I don't know if you've been looking at that, but there is some good information here. That sounds fantastic. I want to know a little bit more.
I do too.
Hopefully, I will soon. In 2 days.
In 2 days. All right. Are we ready to dive into the subject of the week?
Let's do it.
All right.
I think so. We had a bunch of news, a bunch of links, and so people should check them out. But let's get into it.
All right. So we're going to be talking about horror and bringing horror into D&D games, RPG games. I want to preface this by remembering lines and veils. So lines and veils are the idea that you have a discussion ahead of time, and that's actually a big thing too to remember about horror campaigns is that you need to have a discussion before a horror campaign, before you go into it. And you need to discuss how it's going to flow and what kind of things you're going to encounter, because it's really important in a horror campaign to have player buy-in. Because if you don't have player buy-in, some of the things that are horror just kind of sound silly, right? Unless you're in that mode. So kicking it off, lines, veils, and this particular article that I saw added in landmines, which I like landmines now as well too.
Yeah.
So lines.
Interesting.
Pretty easy, right? It's like, okay, you're talking some lines. This is just too upsetting. There's too much history there, or it just it doesn't feel good. So, so that's a line you do not cross. It's just exactly right. Veils are things that are okay to have in the game, but not dig deep into, right? Like, okay, well, this scene is going to happen. It happens off screen.
Mm-hmm.
Landmines. So this is the new one to me. Landmines are, you've agreed to everything and you're playing and something comes up. It's like, oh, by the way, I didn't realize that was a line or a veil. It's a landmine. So, you stop everything before it gets out of control and then you just adjust, right? And that's the
That's
idea behind landmines.
that's really good. I like that because I mean, lines and veils. I've definitely passed out documents, by email to people so that they could record those and we could put them together into a master group. And it's pretty easy from there to be like, okay, so if anyone thinks it's a line for the party. If anyone thinks it's a veil, it becomes a veil for the party, so that we don't have to deal with those. But I like that idea, kind of following up and just being like, you don't have to be perfect on those documents. You can still have an X card or this landmine or whatever else, and just be like,
Hmm.
I know we haven't talked about this yet, but we're not gonna today. This is not
Yep.
gonna be in our game.
Not feeling it.
I think that is good in these kind of adventures where your goal is to set your characters slightly on edge potentially.
Hmm.
With horror, I mean, that's the whole idea behind terror, is that you're just a little bit uncertain, a little bit unsure, and that's a hard place to live in
Hmm.
with a game. So I highly recommend checking out those kind of documents for any kind of horror game setup. Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes back to the player buy-in too, because you know you could be running a horror game and maybe it involves clowns and maybe they think clowns are hilarious, so but they're not in the right mindset for horror, and it
Mhm.
totally derails the game, right? um,
Right.
so getting that player buy-in's like, hey, we're going to be doing a horror campaign. This is going to take a little bit of like um, suspension of disbelief, right?
Sure.
You're coming into it with the right mindset. If you're not coming into it with the right mindset and you're thinking like, okay, well, I'm just gonna goof off the whole time. Well, that's not how to really create a good atmosphere for horror. Um,
Hmm.
in general adventure, yeah, some of that's a little more acceptable, but horror, like, yes, there's goofing off because you need to like release that energy, but
Yeah.
hopefully you're in the place where you are building that energy.
Oh, intriguing. This is fun for me. I like talking about horror because I took a class once, so I'm an expert.
Oh, yeah,
No,
I
no, no, not at all.
I've seen a documentary on horror. I'm an expert.
Dang it! See, that's why you come here to listen to us talk about horror. Um, but like when I think about my favorite horror stories,
Hmm.
um, the one that gets stuck in my head all the time is like the Disney Bing Crosby Legend of Ichabod Crane.
Yeah. Hmm.
um, because it's funny. It's a scary story, but it's usually, I mean, it's done in a funny way, right? It's a little bit light.
Hmm.
There's a super pumpkin head murderer that's cutting people's heads off, but it's Disney, so it's a little bit, you're still going with it, and there is that tinge of horror because there is, or terror rather, something is coming, but it's all about evading it and escaping it and just scene setting. And for me, that's where I like my horror to be. It's a little bit more lighthearted.
Hmm.
Um, but there's still that sense of what is going to happen? What are we going to find? What's going to
Yeah.
go on there? And I love that part. A deeper dive is fun as well, but that kind of campaign could be very cool for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and but even in that kind of campaign, you need that player buy-in, right? Like, hey,
You do gotta
your
be there.
your character has to feel that sense of dread, whether you feel it or not, and you need to do
Yeah,
it to express that in the game to keep the story going on the path that we've set up, right? But
right.
yeah,
Like
no,
if Ichabod Crane had been like, I'm in a cartoon, I don't feel that scared. That wouldn't work. But their character is terrified.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Mhm.
In kind of talking about Ichabod Crane and like favorite horror or even like just spooky stories, you know, for me, I'm a big fan of film. I'm a big fan of classic film. I'm a big fan of
Mhm.
silent films. I'm a big fan of horror films. And with all that in mind, I'm a big fan of horror tropes. And if you watch Cabin in the Woods,
Yes, yeah.
Cabin in the Woods plays with the horror film tropes like amazingly and beautifully. I'm not a huge Joss Whedon fan. I'm honestly, I that's pretty much the only property by his that I enjoy. But it, it definitely does. It takes the horror tropes and kind of doesn't quite flip them on your head, but makes them so that they're so apparent that they are part of the plot and part of the story. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So for me, like, if I were to say, like, what is my favorite kind of horror movie to draw inspiration from whenever
Mhm.
I'm thinking about running horror, that type of stuff, I'm a big fan of like Alien. right? Like,
Oh, sure.
which isn't horribly far from Ichabod Crane, to be honest, right?
Mhm.
It's this unknown monster that essentially terrorizes a small group of people, and they have to somehow figure out how to survive, right? I like the more survival type of horror in that case.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Fighting for your life more so than like the Creature of the Week, the Scooby Doo version of horror, right? But there's a
Right.
great place for I think Scooby Doo versions of horror, especially in D&D with the amazing like breadth of monsters and settings you have to play with. Um, and I've run D&D that way, right? But that's not my like that's not where I would really want to be. If I were to run a completely horror campaign, it would be there'd be survival aspects, there would
Mm.
be a big monster that they can't beat until they have to do X, Y, and Z, and they
Period.
have to try to survive it. Right.
Mhm. You don't want to get anywhere near it at all until you've done all these other things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, which I think is really a useful way to look at horror, because
Mhm.
D&D characters are not quite built for that. So that is a thing that sets a horror campaign away from a regular one, is you have villains they can't beat. Like that's a big deal.
Mhm.
That means that those players, that's something that they can actually worry about. If they do meet that character, that's a campaign ending moment,
Yeah.
unless they can somehow escape and get away. And setting that in stone right at the start is a good way to say this is different than a game that you normally run. Like now we're into that, that generic. Whenever I think about, making fun of like one of the Call of Cthulhu games or something like that, it's always like it's the game where you run away from everything.
Right.
Um, that's kind of an important part of horror is you don't know how to deal with those things, and you got to get away.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. When folks sit down to play D&D, they're usually playing the heroes, the adventurers that are going off to
Right.
save the day. And so you have to almost take a step back and go, oh well, I mean, you're the heroes of this story, but maybe you're not heroes, right?
Hmm.
And because of that, it maybe will free your character as you're building it to realize that, okay, sometimes I have to run away and hide, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Oh, I love that stuff. Some of my, the earliest horror stories that came out, that was all they were. That was it. It was just a page turner where you were just scared of turning the page because the thing was going to happen
mhm,
and you were worried about it. And that's
right?
it. It was just capitalizing on that feeling. And I love going back and reading those and seeing, it's not that it's about like this gore fest. It's not, blood and guts on the screen or anything like that,
Mhm,
being slimed. Although that has a huge place and that is a ton of fun as well. But just that,
mhm,
like, that fear of the next page.
yeah.
Um, I love that. Terror for me is a fantastic trope.
Yeah, I did grab some aids to kind of help me dig into this, and I feel like this is a good time to bring it up. But there's this a adventure from Starfinder called the Signal of Stream or Scream's Adventure Path,
Mhm.
and it's written by well, the first one was written by the amazing Chris Sims. Um, there is a section in this book that's all about like exactly what we've been talking about. It's preparing for horror in playing
Yeah.
horror games. And one of the things that you can kind of think about it when you're thinking about horror is how the horror affects you, how you present it, that type of stuff. So
Yeah.
a couple of the sections are personal and impersonal horror. So it is this a personal horror that's um, you know harassing the PCs specifically, or is it just kind of like more like the infection style where it's hordes of undead and it's just like tr- tromping over everyone.
Ah,
Yeah. The other thing to consider is real and unreal, right? So is it a real threat? Is the horror real, or is it beyond what is real, or is it just in your mind, right? So that's kind of the idea of eh, of the idea of the one character seeing something and none of the other people seeing it, right? And
sure.
what
Yeah.
you see is so crazy, and so do they not see it because it's so crazy and it's out of their realm of possibility, or do they not see it because it's your own personal internal horror?
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, I like that. Um, yeah, my big inspiration for horror, excuse me. There's a whole bunch of them, but Heroes of Horror was a 3.5 book that when it came out, I picked up very quickly. because I was just kind of curious about adding some of those mechanics to the campaign, and I didn't really see them for D&D. And they do kind of a similar thing, honestly. There are the things that affect your character, and there's also just like a lot of rules for horror environments, period, just dread
Mhm.
effects that could be happening, that everybody is going to be seeing. Like, if this is a charnel bog, what's going on there? If it is just a haunting scene, if you were in the mortuary of some kind, what's going on there? Which I love, but there's also these personal things that are only going to be affecting your character, potentially
Mhm.
giving you this extra sense, and I like that a lot. Kind of that split is very fun. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple other things they touch on in here is reason and perception. So trying to deal with phantasms, that type of stuff. Uh,
yeah,
Unknown and known, I enjoy that one. So unknown is the truth behind a horror is hidden. And then the known is that you can find great tension in the known. The known is horrifying, and you already know the truth of it, right? And so
mhm.
that's the unknown and known is an interesting balance. Isolation and betrayal, and then of course like death and rebirth, right? And
That's
those
interesting.
and those are just some interesting kind of ways to look at horror as you're writing it. It's like where on the scale, which direction are you leading on all these various levers to create horror?
Okay, now I'm just thinking about that. I'm going back to like Stranger Things, for
Uh-huh.
example. Like the Demogorgon is a terrifying creature in that the creature itself is scary, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You don't really know what the creature is. You don't know, and that's terrifying. We want to find out, and the characters are terrified of that. There's really not a lot mentioned about what the Demogorgon wants to do.
Right.
Honestly, like that's not part of the story. It's just that this kid is connected to it somehow. That's weird. We got to figure out why. The creature is scary. We got to stay away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never itself given, I think, a lot of intelligence or purpose, honestly, like in a way that a lot of D&D villains are, where it is like, I suppose Strahd is pretty similar. Strahd isn't really doing a whole lot, just kind of there. And you want to avoid Strahd, whenever
Right.
you're running around Ravenloft. Um, I often want my villains to have plans and plots and they're active, right? But terror villains don't have to be. Horror villains can just sit back and be scary.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in your perfect example is Stranger Things, right? It doesn't matter what the Demogorgon is trying to do.
Mm-mm.
Um, what's happening is, this one kid has this weird connection with it and he sees more than others. And then this
Mhm.
other kid has some way to interact with it that others don't. And then the others are almost the outsiders who are being brought in. Meanwhile, the
Right.
entire town is being affected by it, but it's completely nothing to them. Well, maybe until the latest season, but even so, even that, right?
Mhm.
You could get through, and things could go back to normal after that season,
Right.
and still the terror is
Mhm.
lurking in the shadows.
Right, as you were putting it, like you've got the unknown of the Demogorgon. We don't know what that's about, and then we also
Yeah,
have like this corporation. I mostly know what a corporation is about, but
right.
they're doing some things, and I don't know what those things are, and that's
Oh
scary.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
No,
then we get
yeah,
that balance there really nicely.
yeah, yeah. So they're doing a great job of presenting horror in a way that is both known and unknown, and terrifying and grotesque, but also like not. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it,
right.
all right. I'm into it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
my
that's a very good one. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just yeah, in other examples of horror in kind of cinema, for me that I really think is interesting is looking at horror. I feel like to make horror really effective, two things kind of need to be there a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to use the classic film Child's Play as an example. Uh,
Okay,
yeah. So Child's Play is about a serial killer who gets killed, gets put into a dummy. The dummy becomes a slasher flick. That portion of it doesn't matter that it's a slasher flick. But there are Child's Play is a good one. In that Child's Play is simultaneously funny. Like there is humor in there because the line between humor and horror is so thin that it can have humor to break up the scary bits, and it really should.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is a lot of horror has a message behind it too. So when you're thinking about your horror in, let's see if I remember right, Child's Play was, a little bit of a commentary on, maybe it was a commentary on consumerism, right? And then,
Mhm.
Night of Living Dead was a commentary on racism. It
Right.
you can add those types of layers in there that can make for a very more engaging, deep campaign when you have something there as well.
Oh wow. I was just thinking about one of my favorite movies that switches horror tropes, which is Dale and Tucker and Dale,
Oh yeah, Tucker and Dale.
versus Evil.
Yeah.
um, I'm trying to remember that movie because my favorite part about it is the college kids running up into the woods to have a nice time for some reason, and in the among these scary backwoods Appalachia mountains, and actually the heroes are the two like backwoods Appalachians there
Mhm.
who are being haunted by these college students. I thought it was a fun switch. Trying to think if I got a message out of it exactly besides not everyone appears scary, and not
Yeah.
every group of college kids are good. But
Right. Yeah, and of course not all of them have that message, but it is a
yeah,
great tool to create a message if that's what
oh,
you're looking to do.
absolutely. No, I was just thinking about using that as an example to kind of create a message by swapping out the monsters of your scene for the
Hmm.
heroes become the monsters somehow, and like the town is now scared of your heroes for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, and you get a little bit of that sense of what it's like to be on the other side of a traditional D&D quest.
Yeah, that's valid too, right? What would be a more compelling adventure than you are the last remaining members of a kobold tribe and you're attempting to protect your dragon, right? From all
Hmm.
these adventures that keep, raiding your cave, and you have to,
Right.
the survival idea of behind horror. You're in this dark cave and you're setting these traps, but these adventures just keep plowing through them,
Yeah.
and and you can create the that feeling of horror with something as simple as that.
Oh my god, that would be a really fun one shot, and you as the DM haven't really been super clear. You're doing this one shot, you want everyone to play some kobolds, you're going to do this fun thing, and then the at some point you hear something, and you hear a song in the distance, and it's saying words that the players are familiar with, actually, like they're telling a deed, battle the bards inspiring people, and you see like the first like plate mail foot come through, and you realize it's one of your PCs. That's the paladin stepping in, and
Right. Yeah.
all the players are like, wait, what? No. No. That would be funny. I don't know
That
if
would
that would
be.
be mean to do to your players, but now I'm kind of excited about that story.
Aubrey delivered me tea. She is the best.
Oh, that's very nice. I
That's
was
not
delivering.
horror related. All right.
Marzipan just wants to hear about horror, so she's right here hanging
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it's interesting to think about horror too, because what one person considers horror, maybe another one doesn't, right?
Mhm.
So take the movie Army of Darkness. I do not
Sure.
think Army of Darkness is a horror movie. I think it's a
No,
I think it's an adventure movie with
it's a
with monsters
yeah, and gore, right?
and
That's it.
gore.
Yeah, it exists kind of in the realm because it has those gore aspects to it. But it's about as much horror as, gosh, I remember going to like, oh, that was a long time ago, like different animation festivals where it
Hmm.
was just like, let's draw on the gore and let's go for it. And it wasn't horror, it was just, that was part of the cartoon. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, and you take Tim Burton, right? Tim Burton is a master of making things that aren't horror feel like horror, even though they're not horror, right?
Right?
Nightmare Before Christmas, for example, right? You deal with
Yeah.
monsters, you deal with all these creepy things. It tells a really great story. It's not horror.
No.
There's some tense spots in it, like when they're dealing with Oogie Boogie, but it's not horror.
Right.
Willy Wonka,
Right overall. Yeah.
Frankenweenie. the Batman movies he did, right? He's great at pulling some of the things, some of the tropes, some of the feelings, some of the ideas of horror into Beetlejuice, right?
Oh,
Into his films, and in creating that creepy atmosphere that isn't horror. So you can have creepy in your campaigns too, and you can have a creepy campaign without being a horror campaign.
right.
Bec- it, and I think part of that is, how do you get there?
hmm
Yeah.
How do you get there? That's really good. As you mentioned those, I'm thinking about the difference between those and some horror things, because there are certainly moments in Beetlejuice that will just haunt me.
Mhm.
Because it was this thing that was not very scary, and then suddenly, boom, there's a scary thing. It's like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a movie that is just an adventure movie, but then a guy gets melted in slow motion animation, and not expecting that at all, not ready for that, and that was kind of a scary deal the first time I saw it. So
Yeah, that
those
was
kind of
Raiders.
those Raiders.
Yeah, because they opened the Arc of Triumph, and when they opened it, all the spirits came
Oh,
out.
you're right. I'm
Or
thinking
not the
about the
Arc of
one
Triumph.
where they're drinking the Grail.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
Raiders is the one that got me when they opened the not Arc of Triumph, when they opened the Arc, it
the
melted
arc.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, you're right. Also, yes, whenever they drank from the cup, also melted. Okay, you're right.
yeah. But it was just like those moments were strange. Like they were cool endings to those, but like for me, that was just like, this is just fun, and we're just like using whips and stuff, and then
Right.
like suddenly someone melts,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, okay. Um, and I think like putting those elements into any D&D game is kind of takes players aback and gives them that moments of terror, but that's different than building up the theme of horror and terror throughout an
Mhm.
entire game.
Right.
So yeah, how do you do it? How do you put the starting touches on it that
Hmm.
that lead to this final climactic horror scene? Like where do you start?
Yeah. So okay. So we've sat down. We've talked about our lines, our veils, and we've established landmines. We're good to
hmm
go. We have the feeling already. Now, for some folks, this might be a little campy, but I will start with like kind of a specific kind of like flowing, kind of creepy music, right? Like I will set the
Sure.
scene with that. Um, and for me, like this is so. And I will admit this. One of my weaknesses as a DM is descriptions. Right, I don't go into nearly as much depth as I would like to. I don't go into nearly as much depth as many other DMs. But I think if you're doing horror, going into that extra depth and getting really like descriptive, I think that's
hmm
number one right there. Right,
Yeah.
is remember that you're going to be a little bit more wordy in this campaign, because you have to describe little things like the way that the curtain flows with that light breeze that has just
Yep.
flown down the hallway past you, right? In the still night, they're using language like that. Um,
Yes.
you're aiming at using that kind of language to create the atmosphere that then the players will operate in.
Absolutely. And that's really important, especially when you talk about descriptions, because, if you're doing like your aliens scene, you need moments that lead you up before you see the monster. You enter a room and there are some slight trails of slime against
Hmm.
this wall that's been torn apart, like this vent that's been ripped into pieces. You need those. If you don't have those things, then you just go from 0 to 10. And you need to hit 2, you need to hit 3 along the way. Um,
Hmm.
and those have to fit in the middle of a description, right? I need the
Hmm.
rooms that are safe. I need to know that they're okay. I need to know the rooms that are, something's been here and I don't know what. It gives people the chance to investigate and interact, maybe. And then a room that, like, and it's got like now a lot of slime and there's an egg over in the corner and stuff like that. And you realize, I'm in a lair or something, like I'm
Hmm.
in a den.
Yeah.
That kind of build is really fun. And that's all description.
Yeah. It's the difference between like you enter a room and there's a giant adult green dragon across from you getting ready to breathe its poisonous spray, and
Mm.
as the door creaks, you slip slowly into the room, and you're taken aback as these red eyes begin to glow, and you can smell the acidic breath as this gigantic black form right? You just get so
Mhm.
deep into the description that it creates that feeling of horror.
Yeah, I love that. There's a Heroes of Horror did a decent job of this. This is early on when it's starting about setting up its campaign. There's 2 full pages about just creepy effects, and it's just a
Mhm.
long list of things. And some of them are just like a wolf howls in the distance, of course, like simple effects that you could add into your descriptions. There's also weird things like are you doing a sort of campaign where reality is kind of up for grabs, like a cabin in the woods. A character opens their canteen and finds it brimming with blood instead, like something weird has just happened.
Yeah.
Or is it a little bit more investigative, like you realize, with your successful perception check that all the furniture in this room was recently moved around and put right back into place.
Hmm.
And so you actually need to move things aside to find the clues underneath it or the ritual that happened in here. Um, One of my favorites is the only door to this room is reinforced with iron bars and locked from the inside. I don't have to say a whole lot more than that, but suddenly
Right.
I want to know what's going on in this room.
Yeah. I think mystery and horror work very well whenever you put them together in a D&D game.
Yeah.
And I'm specifically thinking about like kind of weird clues that don't really make sense in the first act, but by the time the
Hmm.
third act comes around, it's like, oh well, I'm glad I saw that. Like, you find a clue that's, you find a finger with this purple grub worm eating the flesh off of it, right? That's grotesque.
Right.
That's this
Hmm.
really gross thing you could see, and it could be a clue that leads to the fact that, oh, by the way, the creature that's haunting this area is a giant, you know, pile of roly polies that are purple and eat flesh, right?
Yeah.
Which roly polies are crustaceans and not bugs. Anyway, they're more
I
closely
didn't know
related
that
to
my whole
shrimp.
life.
Yeah, more closely related to shrimp than they are cockroaches. So when
Oh,
next time you're at Red Lobster, feel free to order extra roly polies on your mashed potatoes.
oh, okay.
Okay.
That was gross.
Well, and that brings another aspect of horror too, is gross out, right? There is
Yeah.
definitely the gross out style of horror, and sometimes it's valuable, sometimes it's not. It's a
Right.
discussion you want to have with your players ahead of time, like, hey, how do you guys feel about gross out horror?
Mhm.
And there's definitely plenty of examples of that in popular media. Um, you know,
Sure.
I mean, in fact, like I love slasher films. A lot of them are pretty gross, and and that's part of it, right?
Huh? I remember, I think in high school, maybe I went to go see, it had to be The Haunting. Um, and oh, everyone's getting real into it. I just don't watch horror movies very often, so this was a first for me. It was a new one, and as we enter the house, I think, and we start getting one of our first tense moments, like the piano gets a little scary. We walk in, and there's just a jump scare,
Hmm.
I think it's even fake in the movie. I don't think it's supposed to be real, but this skeleton launches forward on a pitchfork or something like that, and you can hear. I have this perfect memory of the crowd gasping for a second and then me bursting into laughter.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
Um,
perfect. I mean, that's a really great thing about those kind of moments.
well, yeah, Aubrey and I, we saw Happy Death Day
Oh yeah.
in the theater, and that's horror, but it's also a slasher, but it's also like Groundhog Day, and 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 they do a great job of comedy and horror play so well together. I mean, really,
Yeah.
horror is something that you can sprinkle on top of everything.
Hmm.
You take Aliens, the sequel to Alien, which I don't like as much, but we can have a discussion about that later. That takes action adventure and layers horror on top of it.
Right.
Happy Death Day takes comedy and layers horror on top of it. And that's definitely a route you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, One of the things I like about those comedy moments in particular, although this is true in any of these like overlays, is the cycle that comes up. There is this sense tension builds, terrifying moment, and then we get down to the relief section. Like we
Hmm.
can't maintain that high level the whole time. So having those breaks for whatever reason is good,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons I always respected those horror movies that are based around like the silly group of college kids. It's one reason I love the
Hmm.
game Dread so much. Is there is Dread, you're playing with the Jenga tower, And when the tower, everything you do, you have to pull pieces. And when it finally gets knocked over, the person who knocks it over dies. Or they can choose to knock it over on purpose, and it's as successful as possible, right? But you still die, and then everything, like, you build the tower again, and then mechanically everything is fine. Everything's fine. Like, even if the story is a little wild, still your characters feel this sense of release just because they can do things again for a little while safely, and then that builds up to the second death. And I find that is pretty necessary in a horror game.
Yeah, and we've basically two things have kind of triggered this. One, it's Halloween, and two, it's Icewind Dale, because Icewind Dale deals with a little bit of horror as well, in that it's very much, it was described as The Thing does horror, right? And so looking at The Thing, you have you're already in this like wasteland. So there. And the fact that you're watching a horror movie too, right, plays into it. So in this case, you're playing a horror game, that plays into it. So you're already a little uneasy. And then the dread begins to build, and then it gets a little bit easy again, and then it builds to easy, and then it does that a few times before then you get to the rising dread, where then it really gets into the terror and the horror, and
Sure.
and in classic horror film, you get to the end, you get to that and you're not exactly feeling great by the end of it either. You're still feeling some of that uncomfortableness of like what's around the next corner, even though you think you've taken care of everything.
Right, and that's a frustrating thing to swap over to D&D, where you basically solve your problems at the end of an adventure. But like, whenever people leave the haunted house and they've survived and they're driving away, the house is still haunted back there. Like, it's usually there's a great mini series that I love. Oh gosh. It's gone, the name of it. But it's about these objects that have powers, and there's specifically a hotel room and this key that lets you like open any door and then walk into this specific hotel room where reality broke or something weird happened. And one of my favorite things is they destroy a bunch of the objects at the end. And as they drive away, like the door opens up again and those objects reappear, like ready to recirculate and tell a different story. Spoilers for a 20-year-old miniseries. But it's such a cool show, and I love it. And it means that, like, it makes it even more powerful for me, I think, that these characters, no matter what they do, like, the story is going to continue. It's stronger than the heroes are. It's going to stay around. And I love that. I love knowing that the house is still going to be haunting people in the future who come to it. Chucky is coming back.
Yes,
no matter what they do.
You can't get rid of Jason Voorhees. He's unkillable.
You can fix this moment, but that's all you got.
That's all you got. You got this time. But next time Friday the 13th rolls around, or you fall asleep on Elm Street, then who knows, right? Yeah. So in order to bring that intensity to the table, sometimes it is nice to use external tools. You mentioned a dread tower. I think dread is fantastic. We talked about in previous episodes courage or bravery stat. Kind of like a hit point stat before your courage or bravery. I think that's a great tool to bring in, because then it kind of helps you gauge how settled your character is in the situation, and then it gives you something to roleplay off of. A little bit of spooky music, I think, goes a long way. Long, drawn-out descriptions that you use very specific language to kind of help tell that story. But what other tools do we have at our disposal? Like, I was thinking about like dimming the lights, but then if you're around a table, it's hard to see your character sheets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're doing it on Roll20 or something, you can definitely add a little bit of that to your battle map, right? You can dim it a little. You can add some odds and ends to just kind of give it that feeling, like, even if it's a little campy. And I think campy is okay, right? Being a little campy with it, I think is great, right?
Sure.
Maybe when folks show up at your table, or you have like spider webs on the around the battle mat or something, just to kind of give it that a little bit extra.
Cool. I like that. The game 10 Candles is not a game I have played, but a thing I know about it is that you play by candlelight. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And that adds a little bit of spookiness to it. And that game, I believe, is centered around, I think they're tea candles, and when they go out, that denotes something. Like, I think the game lasts until all the candles go out is the idea. So that's a cool idea. If you can light your table up pretty well by candlelight, that provides some spooky atmosphere. Or even you could do that and have lights a little bit dimmer in the background if you wanted to. Could be fun. I like that, just for setting wise. I also think there's some mechanical rules in the game that you could change to help with this as well. Again, looking to Heroes of Horror and trying to translate some of the things in there to our modern game. They have rules in there for changing fear and what frightened means. So that the frightened condition can come up often. Your characters can be scared, but they don't feel the need to like run away or anything. They just have their target of fear that they are scared of. Allows you to start throwing conditions like that a little bit more often, like considering a level of conditions that are not debilitating, but are penalizing, and being a little bit more free about putting these like half penalties on your characters is one way to kind of show this, how it's affecting your character.
Yeah. And and I've been talking about Signal of Screams a little bit from Starfinder, and they do a little bit of that, right? You can get a little buff, but it comes with a little bit of a weakness, and that's something you can kind of put on your characters as well. And the idea is that at least in this, and in a game like Mordheim, whenever you're dealing with some stuff there, is that this bonus is related, the bonus and negative is related to what happened to you, right? So for instance, you see someone transform into a crazy monster. Well, now you have disadvantage against shapeshifters, but your weapon, how to hit them just right, so your weapon does extra damage or something like that, right? Just out of my head. So that's that's the kind of mechanical things you can do to kind of encourage your players to really get into the feeling of what's going on.
There were also a couple sets of rules in here, and I know a lot of games try to do these, right? So they want to give your characters long-lasting penalties. The more they experience these things. I mean, that's like a classic of every Cthulhu game that exists.
Yeah.
And so Heroes of Horror added corruption. Let's just call it corruption.
Okay. Yeah.
And they added depravity as well. So they wanted to do this physical and mental thing. And I have used games with the physical ones because I find that it's hard to use those without getting too close to the real world and not feeling, being like, okay. I don't want to deal with the real world, but there's a lot of physical ones that are kind of fantastic that you could use. Their comparison, mummy rot is a fantastic weird disease that is specifically a fantastic disease. So there's some of these physical elements that you can get, and there are ideas in here about how as you deal with this corruption, it's going to affect you, and maybe that's not every character, but maybe one of the characters would like to gain some of these corruption effects and maybe get some bonuses because of it, like at some level gain a physical feature as they use this corruption to their advantage somehow. I think those kind of trade-offs are a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like, with those kinds of trade-offs as well, that really gets the player into it a little bit more, right? If you just give them a negative, then, some players will just kind of go, all right, that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you give them a positive along with it, the example I gave before, well, then they become like more interested in role playing it out, so that when they get that positive effect from it, it's all that much cooler.
Yeah. This one was really interesting because the way they describe this is they set corruption as a minor, a moderate, and a severe level. And getting past, there was like thresholds basically. If you got past severe, you were corrupted the end. But if you hit moderate, you got a bonus feat. And this is back in third ed. I mean, there's lots of feats that are running around, but that was a fun trade-off to get an extra one. And then if you got to severe, you got an additional trait, or additional feat rather. So that was a fun little, like, I do want to play with that. It has that, like, Lords of Waterdeep style corruption. Like, I do want this corruption. I'm in.
Yeah.
If you make the benefit worthy enough, then yeah, I'm going to buy into your system in order to get it. Not just, as a role playing gimmick, but mechanically as well. I've got benefits here. Yeah. I think that's fun.
Yeah.
So check that out. Even if it does mean that there is, they there is an entire heading in here called "Cleansing Taint." Um, that's on page 67 of this book. I don't know how they wrote that. In all seriousness, I have no idea.
Oh man, Rich, how does one
Yeah.
cleanse taint?
Well, it's a pretty complex process from what it seems. There's a list of spells you could use. Greater Restoration, Wish,
Oh no.
Remove Curse, you know.
Oh man, cleansing taint. Well, this is a subject that I think both of us can continue to talk about, and I think we will. We're going to continue into next week. I think next week will be a little bit more focused on probably player DM interactions, that type of stuff, and talking about how you can use horror effectively in your home D&D game to check things out and tell those spooky stories you want to tell. But
Darn right.
We are right about the peak of our time for today. So, Rich, hey, what you got cooking? What can you talk about? What do you want to promote?
Oh, on Monday, my next puzzle and twine game for the Mission Catastrophe Kickstarter coming out in November should be launched. That's from the game designers at Cardboard Alchemy. And it's a lot of fun. Basically, it's you jump in and you learn how to play the game by going on these short little twine adventures. And it's like a choose your own adventure style game. If you run through it as efficiently as possible, you find the shortest number of turns to succeed at your task. You end up finding a secret puzzle and links to the Discord and different things that you can do and different people who are also on this puzzle path. You also get entries into their grand prize contest where you win a copy of the game. All the miniatures are painted for you and some other goodies. I'm not exactly sure what the whole prize is, but you can find out a whole lot on cardboardalchemy.com. All
right, let's see here. Cardboardalchemy.com. And then I think don't you have a book that's kickstarting right now too?
Oh my gosh, I do have a book that's kickstarting right now. It's going to be for, I think, what are we at? 9 more days now. And that is Game Theory in the Age of Chaos. That's on Kickstarter. The book is by Mike Selinker, who wrote, oh my goodness, 68 different essays, I believe it's 68, about politics over the last 4 years and using game theory to explain a bunch of those. And I went ahead and wrote a page for each one of those, documenting the game theory, talking more about it, going more in depth, because I'm a math nerd, So do check that out. You can get the book for free by donating to different political groups. You can check that out on shark.vote and learn a ton of information there, or you can just back the Kickstarter, which is doing very well.
Boom. All right.
We're sending copies to Congress.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So I have posted those links in the chat. As for me, I'm doing all this month, I'm doing horror films, classic horror films with my DJ streams. So Thursday night starting this week, we're going to start at 6:30, start a little later. So 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. I have a list of movies I'm trying to find good copies of, and then we're going to watch some silent movies and listen to some dance music. We'll do that Thursday, and then next Saturday, of course, I will be doing more DJing Saturday morning cartoons at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And of course, let's not forget that tomorrow we're going to be back here on Owlbear Soup at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. 6:30, right, Rich? Yeah.
Yes, 6:30.
6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time I think we're going to finish up talking about The Fighter and doing our deep dive, and then when we finish that, we'll announce what we're going to do a deep dive into next.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so everyone on Twitch, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Folks on YouTube, do the same. The little buttons in the corner over there. And thanks again, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.